There is a plague sweeping across our fair land of lifting. Those afflicted possess the compulsion to do but 3 lifts for 1 repetition. Such idiotic practices have proven to be as yet almost incurable. But there is hope. The answer is diversification. Diversity is our strength. I don't know why I went from medieval to Black Minister, but let's just go with it. Now, I have nothing against powerlifting, but I have noticed a trend of people who are kind of either frustrated with it or burnt out from it, and they want to train hypertrophy instead. So there's going to be sort of 2 training plans that I'm going to go through today. The first is for people who are not completely burned out in powerlifting. They just want to sort of take a short break from it. And so it does include variations of squats, bench presses, and deadlifts to sort of stay in touch with those movements. It might not be the competition lifts, but it'll be something similar to sort of keep you somewhat in the groove. The other option is going to be from people who are just done. They're just done. They don't want to put a barbell on their back. They are just sick of the lifts going nowhere. They want to just do pure hypertrophy, whatever it takes, completely away from the barbell. And so that will be an option as well. And you can pick and choose, right? Like maybe you're sick of bench presses, but you want to stick with the squat or the deadlift or any of these 3 lifts. They're going to be options in the plan. Now, even if you are not a recovering powerlifter, which by the way is obviously said in jest, powerlifting is totally not a disease. I do think that you will get some value from this just in terms of the tips, the tricks, the techniques that are going to be used for every exercise. And that is a big part of it. You have to change your mindset almost 180 degrees from a powerlifting mindset. So instead of like using the best leverages, using the most momentum possible within the rules, using as little range of motion as possible, using as many muscles to move as much weight as possible, it's sort of going to be the opposite. It's going to be that Alex Leonidas, get the most out of the least amount of weight possible, get more out of less weight. And that is going to be a mindset shift that often takes people several years, but I think can be done very quickly if you are aware of that issue. So you are just using the weight as resistance to contract the muscle against. Now, I'm not saying that powerlifting doesn't build muscle or can't build muscle, but it's certainly not the most efficient way to do that from a stimulus perspective or from a fatigue perspective as well. I'm not saying that powerlifting injury rates are super high. They're certainly not, but they're absolutely going to be higher than typical bodybuilding training because of the focus on just 3 lifts and because you are going heavier as well. So that specificity and that intensity are going to be things that are totally different from typical bodybuilding training. And in a lot of ways, bodybuilding training gives you a lot more freedom to use different movements, different rep ranges. Hypertrophy is a very forgiving adaptation. All right, so let's get into the first day. Day number 1, this is an upper body day, and we're going to warm up with face pulls, 2 to 3 sets of 15 to 20 reps. Kind of near failure, but failure on a face pull is, not that stressful really because it's a contraction focused movement. If you have banged up shoulders, these are going to be something that you do not want to skip at all. But even if you don't, I think this is just a good overall insurance policy because we don't have many movements that are doing external rotation or just moving in this plane. Now, where to pull? You can pull to your forehead, you can pull to your eyes, you can pull to your head, you can pull to your chin. You can do all of them in the same set, right? Like, don't overthink this. Don't overthink the progression of the loading. Just get a good upper back pump, rear delt pump, get a lot of blood into the shoulders and into the upper back. Next up, we have an alternating set, close grip, Larson press or machine press, and then overhand pull-ups or pull-downs. Now, if you still want to keep one toe in the powerlifting waters, you should do a close grip Larson press because it's going to be more specific. But if you don't care about that at all, I think a machine chest press where it converges a little bit more is a good option. It's more stable. It's something that you might not have been doing as a powerlifter. And so I think that is a good option. You can still go pretty heavy. 6 to 8 reps gives you quite a bit of intensity, which you might like as a former powerlifter. And so I think that is a good option there. And then for the pull-ups or the pull-downs, depending on your strength and your fluffiness, either one are okay. I do think that warming up with pull-downs is probably a good idea for most people before doing pull-ups. If you can only do, say, 10 pull-ups, Would you start with your 10 rep max on bench press? Probably not. And so I think warming up with pull downs is probably a good idea. Next up, we have a press, either barbell press or Arnold press, both great movements. A lot of powerlifters are good at moving in the horizontal pressing plane, so the pushes, but they're not as good at overhead work. And so you might suck at this, but I think it's going to be good for overall shoulder health and just not having a weakness. If you're very, very good at horizontal, but not good at vertical, I think that is something that is best worth addressing. And then alternate that with barbell rows or cable rows or ring rows, all good movements. I would say if you have access to them, ring rows are going to be the best option here, just because a lot of powerlifters, they don't have weak cores necessarily, but they just aren't used to doing things other than squat, bench, deadlift. And so I think a little bit of diversification is a good idea there. Then you have 2 sets each of 3 movements, cable lateral raises, each side, spider curls. You can use either an easy bar or dumbbells, both okay, and long rope pushdowns. Now, all 3 of these movements are most challenging in the contracted position. Yes, even cable lateral raises, usually it's going to be most challenging at the top still, even though there's a much better stretch compared to dumbbells. And what I want you to do is go to failure around 8 to 10 reps, and then just keep doing partials with as much range of motion as you can until you get to 15 reps. And if you undershoot things or overshoot things, and let's say you fail at 12 reps, that's fine. Just add weight next time. If you mess up the other way and you only get like 5 or 6 reps, well, you are going to pay because you're going to get 15 reps anyway. So whatever you do, try to get to 15 reps, even if it's going to be well beyond failure. Then the last 2 exercises on this day, you're going to be doing cable crossovers, not beyond failure, just, to roughly failure, not as failure friendly. So no need to go beyond failure. And then rear delt swingers. I got these from the late great John Meadows, where it is a dumbbell lateral raise, but you are going well beyond failure, where you're going very, very heavy and where you can't get full range of motion. You're trying, you're just failing. And these are one of the best rear delt movements that I've ever found. And so you'll thank me later, not during the set, but when you see your rear delts grow, that's when you'll thank me. By the way, this video is sponsored by Boostcamp. They are the long-term sponsor of the channel, and this program will be up in its entirety for free on the Boostcamp app. So you'll have access to this program as well as my 2 other programs on the app, as well as dozens of other programs from some of the best in the fitness industry. Plus, it allows you to log and track your progress, which is absolutely essential. Having that information at your fingertips in the gym where you are actually working out at all times is absolutely essential. Don't rely on your memory in terms of like, oh, I hit this PR, or I didn't hit this PR, or like, I thought this was a PR, but it wasn't. Your memory is not perfect, and you will make shit up if you don't have it, the actual information. So Boostcamp is going to be very, very valuable. I will leave a link in the description and in the pinned comment if you want to check that out. Thank you to Boostcamp for sponsoring this video. Check them out. Back to the video. The next day is a lower body day. We're going to warm up with side plank with leg raises. Now this might seem like some kind of, ballerina kind of movement or something like that, but in my experience, often powerlifters are just not good at this kind of movement where you are forced to use your glute medius and your abductors to raise the leg. Plus, you're going to be working your obliques as well. And so if you do these and you suck at them, definitely do these because they're going to be very important. Do 2 to 3 sets, near failure or to failure each side. Then we're going to get into the meat and potatoes of this day. High bar back squat or front squat. So if you want to keep in the powerlifting scene, I think high bar is a good option. If not, front squats. Both are going to have pretty good carryover most likely, but back squats are going to carry over to back squats a little bit more. So here, 2 to 3 sets, 8 to 10 reps. Keep good form, stay fairly upright, don't use too much hip drive. That's where a lot of powerlifters are going to be like, weight on the bar, weight on the bar, weight on the bar. That's going to be using a lot more hips in a lot of cases. Stay upright, allow the knees to go forward, and use the quads as much as possible. Next, we're going to move on to a hinge movement, either a low rack pull, so you're not pulling quite from the floor, but probably somewhere around mid-shin, or an RDL. I would say for hypertrophy, an RDL is going to be a little bit better here, but for carryover to your competition lift, a low rack pull is probably a good overall idea. If you are pulling sumo, keep in mind that this will probably allow you to use a lot more weight. So I would not use a huge surplus here. Probably like 2, 3, 4 inches. Somewhere on there should get the job done. Then we're moving on to an alternated set. 3A back extensions, 2 to 3 sets of 10 to 15 reps. And then hanging leg raises, 2 to 3 sets near failure. You can do the back extensions Pete Rubish style with the bar on the ground. I like it that style. And you can also put the bar on your back for a little bit of more range of motion as well. Just keep in mind that is a little bit more of a pain in the ass to set up. Then we're moving on to walking lunges as well as powerlift presses. So lunges, fantastic movement. As a powerlifter, often what gets dropped first is the unilateral, either Bulgarian split squats or lunges. I think that's a mistake in a lot of cases, and having these in is a good overall idea. And then the powerlift presses, just press out. You have a cable going to the side, press out, keep braced, and then go back. Keep braced the whole time, and then go back. And that is going to be something that I think a lot of powerlifters don't necessarily have a weakness in because they're used to just heavy weights on the spine.
Heavy shit.
But I think just drilling that is overall a good idea. Now for upper two, we have a Lu lateral raise, and this is going to be a movement that is really taking you through this huge range of motion. And a lot of powerlifters they don't ever really use the shoulder joint in this way. It's a lot of just this, basically. And so if you suck at these, you should definitely do them. Start with very, very light weights, 15 to 20 or so reps, not super near failure, but fairly challenging. Just get a good sort of delt pump. These will work the side delts, contrary to what some people say. Yes, this is side delts, not just front delts. And so I think this is going to be a good warm-up overall. And moving on to the first alternating sets, which, by the way, if your gym is super busy, it's written this way for convenience. So if it's less convenient to do alternating sets, just do all of 1A and then all of 1B, totally fine. So 1A is going to be a barbell incline bench press or a dumbbell incline bench press. So if you want to stay with the barbell bench, use a barbell here. If not, I think dumbbells are going to be a better overall choice. And then similar to the other day, we're going to be doing neutral pull-ups or neutral pull-downs. So instead of working out here, we're going to be working more in, working more lats rather than sort of scapular retraction. Both great movements, and I think they complement each other fairly well. Next up, we have a Smith machine bench press. Now, a lot of power lifters sort of seem to look down on Smith machine, and I think that is a mistake, especially if you want to win that hypertrophy. I think that is a good option. You can also do dips or rings turned out push-ups here. That is going to be a good option if you want to sort of diversify your training even further. 2 to 3 sets of 8 to 10 reps here, and also 2 to 3 sets of 8 to 10 reps on a chest supported row. It could be an actual machine where you rest your chest on, but it could also be something where you're just lying on an inclined bench and then using dumbbells to row. Then we have sort of a tri-set. 3A is an upright row or dumbbell lateral raises, both okay. 3B is an incline dumbbell curl or preacher curls, both are okay. And then 3C is going to be either skull crushers or a short rope push down. All excellent movements there. And what I want you to do is one set of 8 to 12 reps and then rest, pause, where you get 15 extra reps. So you're doing little baby sets of 3 to 5 reps after that. Similar to myo reps, but not quite as far. Just do total 15 extra reps after that. I think that's fine. And then after that, another set of 15 to 20 reps. So go a little bit lighter here, probably 30, 40% lighter on that second set, because the initial set is going to be quite a bit higher reps. And then it's also going to be, fatigue floating around as well. And you can maybe start with just that first initial slightly heavier set and do that back down set after a few weeks when you're sort of already used to the program. And then we're going to finish off with an overhead cable extension. A lot of powerlifters, they're just not that good at long head. And then cable hammer curls to work the brachialis. I think a lot of powerlifters need to work on the cannons a little bit, and so this might be helpful. All right, for the second lower body day, we're going to be doing a weighted plank to warm up. This is something that I actually got from Freaky D, Dennis Arnold, And I've really been enjoying them. I've done them sort of on and off over the past, I don't know, maybe 8 to 10 months or so. And I think they are just an excellent sort of overall bracing movement. And then for the first quad movement, you're going to be doing either an Anderson squat or a leg press. So again, if you want to keep in touch with squatting, I think an Anderson squat, a squat from pins in that bottom position, is going to be a good overall option. It does limit the weight that you can use a little bit, but it should have a pretty good carryover to your normal competition back squat. I would, however, probably do these high bar just so you're staying a little bit more upright. Either way, do them for 2 to 3 sets of 8 to 10 reps there. Then you're going to move on to a hinge, either a snatch, grip, deficit deadlift, which should have a pretty good carryover to your normal competition deadlift. And then good morning is an option as well here if you perhaps just want to get away from deadlifts, but you still want to work that posterior chain. Then we're going to move on to the hip thrust. Now, a lot of powerlifters might laugh at this movement, but I think it is a good overall option. Very minimal axial loading, none, I guess. But it does load the glutes fairly directly, and it is more of a contraction-focused movement than a lengthen-focused one. 2 to 3 sets, 10 to 15 reps here, and try to get a nice, contraction at the top. Next, we're going to be doing Bulgarian split squats, so that butt is filled with blood, and now we're going to sort of stretch the glutes out. 2 sets, 8 to 12 reps here. Don't go super heavy on these. Really make sure that you're getting a good range of motion at the bottom. These are great for stability, for balance, for athleticism, for just getting that full range of motion at the bottom position. And for a lot of people when they're squatting, they don't necessarily get that full glute stretch, but you absolutely will here. Then we're going to move on to 4 isolation movements, leg extensions and hamstring curls, 2 sets of 10 to 15 reps, and then the adductor machine, as well as sit-ups or cable crunches for 2 sets of 15 to 20 reps. And you can kind of do these in any order, right? Like if you see the adductor machine is open, but some chick is sort of eyeing it up, you can hop in there and steal the machine from her early if you want. The order here is not that important. But these are just great ways to put meat on the lower body, and then sit-ups and cable crunches are just going to be a good way to work on that rectus abdominis, the 6-pack musculature. Next up, we have an arm and delt day, also known as a bro day. So we're going to start off with dumbbell hammer curls, 2 to 3 sets, 8 to 12 reps. I really like this movement. Easy to take beyond failure. Works the brachialis, brachioradialis. Fantastic overall movement. And you're going to superset these or alternate set with these, either one. You shouldn't need tons of recovery here. With a V-bar push down, again, 2 to 3 sets of 8 to 12 reps. I got these from Bald Omni-Man. This will allow you to go a little bit heavier. There's a little bit more stability compared to a rope. If these give you elbow issues or wrist issues, which they can perhaps, just use a rope. I think that's totally fine as well. But the V-bar is going to be, a little bit more medial head. Or should I say medial head? Then we're going to move on to 1-arm cable curls. I've been doing these on the cable row machine, which I think is illegal in most countries, but luckily I haven't been stopped here, so I think it's okay. And you can go beyond failure on these pretty easily if you want to. If you're feeling, that fire in your belly, you can sort of like help yourself up on that, those last few reps. And then you can alternate these with overhead cable extensions, either standing, where you have the attachment sort of right below the bottom position. So don't start from the very bottom and try to twist around. That's going to be not great, potentially. Start with it just below here, and then, do your sets, and then you can just place it back. Or you can do them sort of leaning away where you were standing, the cable is attached high, and then you're just doing your reps like that. Then we're going to move on to either cable, dumbbell, or machine lateral raises. Pick your poison. I don't care what you do. All are pretty good movements. I have been jiving with the machine lateral raises recently. Just a very very good option if you have access to it. But if not, cables are a good option. And then finally, dumbbells are pretty good as well. And 2 to 3 sets of 12 to 15 reps here, which I think is a good rep range for lateral raises. And you can do partials beyond failure again, if you're feeling up to it as well. Alternating these with cable crunches, 2 to 3 sets of 15 to 20 reps here. Make sure that you're using as much abdominal as possible and not just using your hip flexors as a lot of people do. You can move more weight if you're using hip flexors, but really try to focus on bringing your sternum to your pelvis and crunching down. And then we're going to finish with a tri-set of Y raises or face pulls. Again, both good movements, something that a lot of powerlifters need to work on. And then wrist curls and wrist extensions. Some powerlifters do have big forearms from just holding deadlifts, but many do not. And so I think having something just a little bit more dynamic where you're working the flexors and the extensors is a good idea. I mean, very few people are actually doing this movement in the gym, maybe outside the gym, huh? So I think training that is probably a good idea, whichever way you do it. And at the end of this day, or maybe on days off, whatever you want to do your cardio. This is something that a lot of powerlifters have traditionally neglected, which I think is a mistake. Could be pushing a sled, could be sandbag work, could be incline treadmill, exercise bike, stair stepper, swimming, running, I don't care. Whatever it is, make sure you get your heart rate up and you keep it up for as long as needed. Could be 10 minutes if it's a good 10 minutes. Could be 20, 30 minutes, whatever you're into, as long as you're doing it on a consistent basis. Now, a few things about the plan that as a powerlifter you might sort of be concerned about. First, there's no clear progression. So it's not like 70%, 72.5%, 75%. None of that. With hypertrophy training, it's more by feel, and you're adding weight when you can. Not like, oh, I have a goal of lifting this much on this day, therefore I need to get ready in a very strict way. No. Powerlifting training is more complicated in terms of progression. In terms of week to week to week, that is where the complexity lies. Bodybuilding training, hypertrophy training, is more complex in terms of a week fitting in all the stuff that you need to fit. The entire body, guess what? It's not worked by squat, bench, deadlift. There's a lot of functions, a lot of muscles that need to be managed in terms of the plan. So hypertrophy training is more complicated just in a week, but the progression, it's more flexible. It's more free form. It allows you a little bit of play in the joints in order to get to where you want to go. And so I think if you're a former powerlifter, you can take more of a relaxed approach to this style of training, especially if it's new. You should see results without obsessing over putting weight on the bar every single session. If you miss your numbers when strength training, maybe kind of an issue. If you miss your numbers when hypertrophy training, you still did something, right? You still hypertrophied the muscles during the session, even if you got one less rep than the week before, right? Because there's a lot of other stuff going on. And so progression might not necessarily be exact. There might be some fluctuations over time, which is totally fine. And you can also auto-regulate the sets where I have 2 to 3 sets written. Start with 2, add in the third after a few weeks or whenever you feel like you can do a little bit more. This is something that, again, a lot of people don't like to hear. They want to know, oh, this is when I do this set, this is when I add this in. You necessarily have to go by feel. I think that's a useful skill for anyone to learn, but I think especially for powerlifters, learning how to go by feel is absolutely essential. Also keep in mind that if you change an exercise or two in the plan, that is most likely totally fine. I'm not one of those coaches or something who's like, no, you need to do everything exactly the same. No, like if you switch a standing barbell press for a seated barbell press or something, like more often than not, that is totally fine. And a movement pattern has so many different movements that you can choose from that it probably does not matter that much. If you really like a certain curl, you can probably use that curl instead, and I don't see that being an issue most of the time, especially if you do a movement here and it just doesn't really agree with your body. I think swapping it out is a-okay. So the full program in its entirety will be up on the Boostcamp app. If you want to check it out, I will leave a link in the description as well as a pinned comment down below. Check it out. They are the only long-term sponsor of the channel, the only sponsorship that I've ever taken, because they are legit. They have an awesome product. And so if you want to support the channel, definitely check that out below. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you in the next video. Peace.